Welcome to Second Take, the show that focuses on the issues behind the news. The Taxation Laws Amendment Bill, released on July 8, contained two surprise amendments to mineral royalty taxation. Mining Weekly editor Martin Creamer tells us more. Welcome, Martin.
Thanks, Ashni.
Tell us, what are the two amendments in the bill and what do they mean for mineral royalty taxation?
It's so regrettable because the Davis Committee had a session and they had all the bigwigs there, including, the commission, SARS represented, and practitioners and mining companies, and they are gearing towards trying to clarify a lot of the issues around taxation, which is so important. And for some reason or other now, the tax man has thrown in this Taxation Laws Amendment Bill. Timing is very, very bad because it's like just muddying the waters. And there are two surprise things that have come up. The one does away with something that has been hard fought for, and that is giving a bigger time frame to do all the calculations. So it's instead of doing it on a 6 monthly period, they let it coincide with income tax to do it on a 12-month period. What has happened now is that this amendment bill, it pulls that back to 6 months. So this creates a lot of panic because you've got to do your calculations. But worse than that, the Second Amendment allows the Revenue Service to actually query if you are different in your calculation from the previous year or previous years. If they think there's something anomalous about this, they can ask you to justify that. And if they feel you don't justify it, they can put their own estimate on, which is quite a frightening thing. So it's just a pity that as the planets were starting to line up in terms of the Davis Tax Committee meeting on the tax laws, you have, this being thrown in, which just upsets everything again. It takes everybody off guard. They start losing confidence and enthusiasm and belief that things are going to improve.
KPMG corporate tax head Mohammed Saluji urged the mining industry to make hard submissions against the two proposed amendments. Can you tell us more about this?
Yeah, so, he's saying to the industry, look, push back against this, because if you don't, and it gets into the legal system, it's going to be far harder. If this starts going through Parliament, it's going to be far harder to push it back. Work fast now, so that you say that, these things are going to just create a lot of confusion. And that confusion is very problematic because people stop investing because they can't invest under these circumstances because they don't quite know where they are. And if you look at this royalty, it's not as if, you don't pay it if you make a loss. It's got a floor of 0.5%. So you can make a loss. You've still got to pay that. And I think that's why, the commissioner is so keen on this, because he knows he's going to get it. He's going to get that 0.5% come what may. If times are good, instead of having a windfall tax now, you would pay even up to 7% on unprocessed ore and 5% on refined ore. The industry is not complaining about that because, during the last boom, they started saying, surely the taxes should be a little bit higher because, things are so good. Now they've catered for that. We won't need a windfall tax. It's built in here. But don't make it so onerous that, the people lose heart. And I think they should then try and push back against this industry and probably the Chamber of Mines to say, no, let's get back to where we were. Don't take away what we were fought for, because we thought that battle had been won. Now we see we've got to start all over again. So hopefully they will re-look at it.
Saluji has said that the timing of the proposed amendments could be seen as inopportune, as you've said. Why so?
The thing is here, you get a very willing Davis Tax Committee. They want to sit down, and they did. They've sat down on this, royalty tax issue because people have been saying there's a lot of anomalies here, and they've listened. And everybody is sort of acknowledging and recognizing that they seem keen to do the best job. They seem keen to do a job which makes sure that there is certainty and therefore competitiveness. Because if you're not even going to be certain, then people, you're a non-starter from a foreign investor's point of view, because he's saying, well, get that right first, because I don't know what's going to hit me, if I come in here on an investment. And these people look at 15-year investments and 30-year investments. So you've got to have a clarity on that. So just after they have a session, which seems very positive, and they put in all their submissions, a couple of months after that, when you think, well, Davis is now going to come through with these recommendations, they're going to take what we said into account, it's almost on the eve of their report, and it could be their final one on mining taxation. Up pops this, and it puts a spoke in the wheels and upsets everything needlessly, but perhaps purposefully, because we know that there's a bit of fight going on in the SARS at the moment. We've seen big headlines in the Sunday Times, where there are elements within there that are recalcitrant, and they are not wanting to go along with what the minister says, and there's a massive division. I would speculate that perhaps this has its roots in that, where perhaps they're listening to what the industry wants and saying, no, this is what you're going to do, we boss. And that's an unfortunate situation where you've got a division, in SARS, and you've got a division in Treasury. We've never had that before in South Africa, and it can do huge damage to the economy.
The Davis Tax Committee's next mining tax report is expected to provide the royalty regime with much needed certainty. Can you tell us more about this?
Yeah, at this session, everybody was enthusiastic about this session. They were saying there was a lot of nodding of head and acknowledging that, you need to have a non-discretion when it comes to the calculations, and they listed about 8 technical problems. And the idea was that the recommendations that would be made by the Davis Committee, and that's another worry, because the Davis Committee can only make recommendations, would take away all these sort of irregularities in this bill, and it would refine it to a point where after 6 years of use, people have come to realize that there are interpretations here which can be exploited by, the taxman to the disadvantage. So let us make it clear, crystal clear. Otherwise, we're going to have to pay penalties, we're going to have to pay all sorts of things that really upset a business, especially these bigger businesses with their shareholders looking down their across at what they're doing all the time. Can be very, very debilitating in terms of investment. We need that investment. There's so many opportunities, but people will look to Zambia or they will look elsewhere in Africa if there's more certainty there, or neighboring Botswana, as people often do. But they won't come in, these big corporations. That's been proved when things are not so good. You might get small little players wanting to come in because they're willing to take bigger risks and they can negotiate their way around. But the bigger ones that have to be totally transparent, they will shy away. So they've given, half a dozen more. I think it's like a dozen points that, how do you calculate this? Can you do it post earnings before interest and tax, or at what point do you do it? And can it involve does it involve removing the capital expenditure? What about transport? What about head office costs? And if you try and tax on the transport or see that as revenue, if you see that as being part of what can be a royalty, then people are going to run, because that is separate from the ore. So you've got to take the discretion out of it, because the moment there is discretion, often, any revenue authority will look for what is best for it, and then they will say, no, you've got to pay this. And when it enters into a dispute like that and it has to go to court, there's all sorts of investment issues. People hang back, and that's going to be bad for South Africa.
Thanks for speaking with us, Martin.
Great pleasure, Sashni.
That's it for today. Join us again next week for more news and analysis on South Africa's mining industry.